Welcome back to the Deploy Securely podcast, where we go deep on the cybersecurity, compliance, and privacy implications of using AI. I'm your host, Walter Haydock, the founder and CEO of StackAware. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking again with Steve Dufour and Mark Blackham of Embold Health. I chatted with these gentlemen a little while ago about Embold and how they're rolling out AI at a high level, but today we're going to go a little bit deeper and talk about one of the products that they've recently launched, and I think you'll really enjoy the conversation. So for background, Steve is the Chief Security and Privacy Officer at Embold, where he's worked for almost 4 years. And before that, he served in security and data engineering roles at Apple and 3M. Mark is the Vice President of Engineering at Embold, where he leads development efforts for their healthcare platform. Gentlemen, great to see you again.
Thanks for having us.
So, Mark, I'll start with you. Recently, Embold has launched a new product offering called Eva, which is super interesting to me because it leverages generative AI for some really interesting use cases. Can you say more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is a product which is the start of what is going to be a broader AI suite of tools that Embold is going to be offering. Eva specifically is designed to meet people where they are in their healthcare journey. Most people, when they're looking for a doctor, they don't really know what they're looking for. They might not know that a podiatrist treats foot issues. They surely might not know that a doctor is good at what they do or can help them with the thing that they need. And Eva is designed to make that search for a doctor much easier and deliver the objective data that we built over the last 6 years into easy to use conversational flow that can extend to multiple languages, multiple conditions, multiple symptoms. And it was originally designed basically to say, hey, how can we search by condition and symptom and lead you to the right high quality provider?
Awesome. So is this a natural language interface where people can just ask questions of it like they would, a chatbot for another business?
Yeah, exactly. So on the front end, it's basically a chat interface that ties into all of our aggregated provider scoring measures and allows people to basically ask anything related to a doctor that they'd be searching for. We've limited it to not expand past that specific objective at this time, but there's obviously future opportunities for it to go into things like cost of care or facilities that are of high quality and places and medical records that are more applicable to understanding like medication, like the history of a user. That said, you got to start somewhere, and our objective as a company has always been to get people to high quality doctors that specialize in the care that somebody needs. And that's what we built in Eva.
That's awesome. I know, just personally from my experience as a consumer, just getting that type of conversation would usually require calling a doctor's office, maybe talking to a nurse. Maybe they'd say, oh no, you need to come in to get a referral, that takes time, that costs money. And, when people have serious health conditions, like time is precious. That's your lifeblood.
Yeah. And additionally, the way people find doctors today can be, hey, I asked my neighbor, or I searched on Google. And a lot of those times, those reviews are like very subjective. With the data that we have, we know it's objective and it's measured based entirely on the performance of a provider. And we can make it easy enough to interface to say, hey, this person can help me with breast cancer, prostate cancer. We know that because they perform a lot of these types of cases and they've had really great outcomes. So just being able to expose that information to regular people, I think it's a huge win.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the state of the art most advanced thing I have dealt with in my personal experience has been being able to send like a direct message to a nurse and then have her respond, the next day maybe and take a picture or something. And this seems like it's an order of magnitude more advanced. So really great to hear that. So Steve, last time you were on the show, you mentioned that quality management was high on your list when it came to analyzing the effectiveness and security of AI systems. So, can you speak at a high level about your approach there? And then specifically for EVA, if you have any data or benchmarks that you can provide to show how effective it's been, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the quality management portion of it, remember the original policy that we spoke about before actually has three major components other than security, privacy, and legal, and also compliance. So we're talking about responsible AI, we're talking about human oversight, and we're talking about quality management. So for the quality management portion of it, and this part should sound familiar because of what Embold does: appropriateness, effectiveness, and the last one is repeatability, right? So using these three metrics, we're talking about EVA as a product. This is a product that goes back and forth with an end user. They're having a conversation, right? So EVA will recommend a provider if it can, right? If appropriate. So was that recommendation appropriate? So for example, I go into EVA, type some stuff, it comes back with, let's say a heart surgeon or a cardiovascular surgeon, right? Like, no, I have foot pain. Why are you recommending? That's not an appropriate response, right? The next one is effectiveness, right? Like how many back and forths did the product actually have to do before it came to that, right? And the last one for repeatability, we have previous metrics and current metrics, right? So if we compare the two against a baseline, like we can then show areas of improvement, right? How is the product performing over time, and does it go above or below?
Awesome. Can you say more about those benchmarks and its performance so far?
Yeah. So, did you want to talk about some of the scoring methodology and as well as where they can find more information?
Yeah, I think we need to take a bit of a step back and look at the initial objective of the tool, right? If we want to guide people to the right specialist for the care that they need. So with that, I think the first thing that you have to test is, are these valid specialties of doctors that we're recommending? And if we do it a sample size that basically allows us to say we're confident that it does that so many times to a high percentage over a really vast amount of basically clinical diagnoses or symptoms and conditions that also overlap in many cases. Like you can have what we call like a multi-label classification problem, which is, hey, I have headaches, but there could be 10 other symptoms that then also lead me to a neurologist or a primary care or another type of doctor. And with that, I think what you have to do, like you do with any kind of model regression or scoring, is you have to come up with what are all your valid truths. And by knowing all of your valid truths, you then have to write all these different scenarios that you're testing that are very diverse. I mean, healthcare landscape is so wide. So with that, we took, 50 different scenarios that cover a very broad range of specialties. And we also introduced bias into it. So, because every person is slightly different, there's also ethnic considerations and cultural considerations that every time that you use these types of tools might have different outcomes depending on the person who's using it. So by taking all those and, both having manual users testing the tool and using generative AI to also test the tool, which is actually a really hard process in some ways, but it's one way that you can get vast amount of data to say it was repeatable. It was effective in meeting those valid truths. And with that, you look at kind of industry standards, which say, hey, a good F1 score is between 80 and 85% for a model's accuracy. But for us, it was like, okay, we're dealing with healthcare. We're dealing with big problems that, hey, if we send you to the wrong doctor, that's a risk. At the end of the day, as long as we get you to a healthcare professional, because our goal is not to diagnose you. Our goal is to get you to a healthcare professional who can then, help you on your healthcare journey. And that healthcare professional is somebody who's high quality. So we set benchmarks for ourselves that said, hey, we have to be greater than 90% on this. And when we were testing that initial objective, we actually found that in almost all of our tests, we were greater than 95%, which I think is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, it really is. That's it kind of blew it out of the water.
And yeah, I mean, it's great to see that you've been having that success with a tool in an area that's not especially well tested, because like we've discussed previously, the costs, the administrative costs, the financial costs of the way we're doing business right now, in my opinion, as a country, I don't think we're doing a great job. And it's good to see innovators that are pushing the envelope here, while at the same time being safe and secure. So that's why I would love to talk to you, Steve, a little bit about some of the security, privacy, and compliance issues that you identified ahead of the launch of Eva and some of the steps you took to manage those risks.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as security and privacy goes, this is AI in general, like released to the public, came in like a flood, right? It creates a lot of uncertainty with what this thing actually means, right? And what can it do? And what are people going to use it for? And then what's it actually being used for, right? Like as far as like intended use goes. From a security perspective, typically people look at the CIA triad, right? That's a very classical way of looking at it. But if you look at it from the opposite direction, right? Like what are you trying to avoid, right? So we're talking about destruction, disclosure, devaluation, things like that, that really create the opportunity to assess risk from that viewpoint, right? And getting into specifics. So for AI, we have to look at the Eva product specifically. What are the risks for somebody using the tool and potentially this particular product going off the rails, right? Doing something that we didn't intend to do or recommending the wrong provider, right? And so it really has to do with the testing methodology that we designed, which also creates a great opportunity to use AI for testing itself. In our talk yesterday, Mark, like kind of brainstormed the 5-step process for products to use AI in their software development lifecycle, which should include quality checks, right? First, you need to build a product, right? Second is you need to make that product good, so to speak. And so currently there's a lot of manual testing going on, right? Somebody logs into an application, does like a select from a database or something like that. And quality assurance professionals can use tools such as Selenium, right, to automate some of the tests. But the third point is you can actually use AI for your quality test, right? One approach you could take is actually feeding raw results into AI to judge AI, right? The fourth one is to use for bias testing, right? So if you're using generic testing that doesn't take into account, let's say, underrepresented groups or at-risk groups, such as race, ethnicity, age groups, such as the elderly or even the very, very young, as well as literacy levels, right? You can use AI for your bias testing as well. And the fifth one is content filtering and abuse monitoring. So we currently use Microsoft for our infrastructure, which has built-in abuse monitoring, right? But wouldn't it be cool if you weren't 100% dependent on an external vendor for that particular feature? So like a very mature organization as far as AI goes should be able to utilize AI for their own abuse monitoring and their own content filtering. That way you have AI in the front, right, doing the abuse monitoring, AI in the middle, as far as the product itself, and AI at the end, right? For the quality assurance portions of it. And you end up having this cycle that utilizes AI from beginning to end to improve.
That was super helpful. Really, really appreciate that detail. So, in terms of the specific steps you took to identify any risks with the application along those 5 angles or themes, can you say a little bit more about that and what your experience was as a result?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, I took IAPP training. So that's the International Association of Privacy Professionals. They have AIGP training. It was extremely helpful in formulating the initial policy, which should be the framework for everything coming out as far as the product goes. We contacted you for penetration testing as well as the governance portion of it goes. And we talked about this before, but it was really good because it looked at the entire program as opposed to just AI, right? Because AI has all sorts of implications, right? Like we're talking about inputting data, we're talking about receiving data, intended use. Like there's all kinds of risks there, as well as legal, from a terms of use standpoint, privacy statement, privacy policy, the entire workflow. Whenever you think of security as well as privacy, that entire workflow of like policies, procedures, and any type of gaps where there's a need for improvement. Very, very helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, and from the penetration test that we did, I was impressed by the rigor and the robustness of the guardrails that you had in place. I won't go into depth here, but really impressed by what you did, and the penetration tester that StackAware worked with. He's an Army Cyber Command veteran, so he's used to navigating around networks that he's not supposed to necessarily be in, and he actually had a pretty difficult time, making Eva do anything that it wasn't supposed to do, with a few exceptions. And yeah, I was really impressed by that. As far as companies that are building specifically customer-facing chatbots in this space, obviously you don't want to give your competitors the blueprint, but at a higher level, what would you say would be some best practices if you're going to go down that road?
Be careful of putting your company's IP into models. I feel like you should protect that at all cost. I think there's so many different ways that you can introduce RAG without having to put your data into pre-existing models. I think there's so many companies that are looking at ways that you can actually just tie into search APIs after extracting certain parameters out of discussion, where you've pulled context and intent out of a conversation to then use them as parameters to hit an API and return results. And at high level, that's part of a methodology behind how we look at our product and how we thought about building our product, because we have an API. We have an API which has a lot of data in it that we've accrued over the last 6 years, and in order to surface that, you don't want to just put it into a public model. You want to put it into a secure application that delivers it into features that are custom and on your own platform and are secure.
Yeah, definitely. I think you hit on two different issues that are both really important. So I'll give you an example of a different situation, not related to Embold, but last fall, OpenAI released their GPTs functionality, which allows people to build custom versions of ChatGPT. Essentially, it's allowing it access to external APIs, giving credentials to those APIs. That's a different issue, which I won't touch on, but also giving the GPT a custom knowledge base. So, for example, you have quite a bit of proprietary data. So there were two issues here. One, by default, the GPTs were training on the knowledge base by default. You could disable it, but if you just went in and started building something, OpenAI would be training on your knowledge base that you provide to it, which could include proprietary or confidential data. So that's one issue. Now, even if you had avoided that first risk and just disabled that training functionality, another problem was that people very quickly were showing that if you had code interpreter enabled, you could do prompt injection against the GPTs to extract the entire database. So, there were people who would put like salary data and things like that, to help people kind of estimate how much they would be able to get for a certain position. And then people were just immediately extracting, the entire database from these GPTs through prompt injection. And I think this highlights a couple things. One, like, don't provide more data to any system than you need to. You might need to, to get the functionality that you want, but, take a least privilege approach. Secondly, it's important to understand how people are going to interact with this application and have what I describe as a neutral security policy. So, for example, if you ask OpenAI, if you look at their documentation, it said, people who have code interpreter, or if you enable code interpreter, people are able to download files. So, like, I guess you could say it was kind of I told you so. They could extract the entire knowledge base, including your proprietary information. Conversely, or conflicting with that, however, is another security researcher I have worked with. He did his own set of prompt injection attacks against the GPTs and extracted the custom messages from some of the OpenAI ones. So these are completely operated by OpenAI. The data is from OpenAI. And he found that the system prompts, so these are hidden prompts that are not exposed or not meant to be exposed to the user, specifically told the model, whatever the user does, do not reveal or allow him to download the entire knowledge base. So looks like OpenAI itself, which is like the leader in AI architectures, we would hope, was a little bit confused about best practices for how to expose proprietary data using retrieval augmented generation pipelines. And so even internally, they weren't clear. And then kind of the most important lesson, I think, is that, if you're ever trying to use some sort of system prompt to control the behavior of a large language model, like, buckle up, because there are going to be challenges involved in that. Sometimes that might be the only way you can do it, but especially if you have a confidentiality issue, like you need to protect certain types of data from disclosure, I wouldn't rely on a system prompt to do that. I would use an API or a rules-based access control procedure to do so. So I thought that was super interesting that you came to that conclusion as I did. So in terms of Eva, what's the future? You mentioned some things like cost analysis and things of that nature, but to the extent that you can share, high level, what's the roadmap? What other sorts of AI features and products do you have in the hopper?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think about this question every day because I think you have to have a product mindset that thinks about connecting an entire ecosystem together. And this is what solutions aggregators in the healthcare space are doing today. They're taking multiple different point solutions and they're kind of embedding them into one system. And then at that point, as long as you've got integration with, authentication flowing through, then you might have the ability to have a one-size-fits-all product that allows you to, schedule your appointments with your doctors, allows you to communicate with your doctors about your healthcare records, allows you to find the doctor in the first place who is high quality, meets you where you are in your healthcare journey, and also, ingest that medical history in such a way that makes it that much better at the tool at doing things that are important and relevant to you than the tools that are available today. I think that it is helpful probably to find things around cost-related data, whether it is, hey, if I get this procedure done at this place with this doctor, is it going to be cheaper to me and they're still high quality? There's a lot of waste in medical spend. I think that I think I read an article in Forbes the other day that says that most of the navigation tools that you have out there provide a search directories 80% inaccurate on the data for like the locations in which people practice at, or the phone numbers in which are available for you to actually call that doctor. So what happens when people use these tools is they can't even get a hold of a doctor, which is like a horrible user experience. So by being able to tie all these things together, I think in the age of co-pilots, so to speak, you have the ability to have something that could be outside or inside a product that can start tying these different applications and the benefits ecosystem together to make it that much more meaningful to an end user.
Awesome. And Steve, from a security and privacy perspective, what's on your radar long term when it comes to chatbots in particular, but also AI in general?
A lot of concern for inventory is one. We talked about this previously, like AI as a product, AI as a behind the scenes processor at companies. It's extremely difficult to keep track of all those things. As far as security and privacy goes, like federal and state governments typically take a long time to catch up to the reality of technology and those capabilities. Not looking forward to, but looking for changes at the state level as well as the federal level for the usage of AI and whatever it happens to be, as far as like responsible AI, what that actually looks like. That's going to be a challenge, but also look forward to it, right? Because like anything product related or human related, we want to improve, right? We want to improve our products. We want to improve as a company. We want to improve as security and privacy practitioners, right? And this challenge gives the opportunity to actually improve.
Yeah, and I think you're already seeing some things popping up here and there in the European Union. The AI Act has passed. I just finished all 459 pages of it. It's quite a substantial document, and I actually hired a contract lawyer to go through it and build me a flow chart to figure out the implications for businesses. And then in the United States, we've seen New York City has passed some AI specific legislation, mainly on the anti-discrimination side of things. Same thing with Colorado. They actually just signed into law SB 205, which is nicknamed the Mile High AI Act, also focused primarily on anti-discrimination, less so on cybersecurity. But it does have some interesting provisions in that if you're following frameworks such as the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, which I know we've done an evaluation for Embold on, as well as ISO 42001, which is an emerging AI governance standard, then you will have affirmative defenses against alleged violations of the law. So I think compliance it's going to be a lot of blocking and tackling as we move forward. But if you can have a reasonable and defensible way of doing business in place, I think that's going to be a huge competitive advantage going forward.
What are your thoughts on ISO, the new standard that came out?
At a high level, I would say it is very similar to ISO 27001. There are some tweaks here and there in terms of AI impact assessments, where you need to evaluate the impact of AI on individuals and societies as well as the organization. So that would be quite a different thing from ISO 27001, or a slightly different thing. I think it remains to be seen what the uptake or the adoption of the standard will be. I have a post that that I put together explaining kind of the three archetypes, I think, for ISO 42001 certification, and I'd say they're AI powered startups who kind of need some sort of certification. You normally, in the enterprise sales cycle, once you get to a certain point, you need SOC 2 or ISO 27001 to make it through the due diligence of your bigger enterprise customers. For AI powered companies, 42001 hits some of those wickets, but it also covers a lot of other things. So that's why it might be useful to be the primary standard that these companies will go for. Number two would be heavily regulated companies, so healthcare and financial services, because there's natural conservatism in those types of industries, and having an external authority sign off on your artificial intelligence risk management program and management system could be definitely super helpful. And then the third archetype would be companies that are doing substantial amounts of training on customer data, because companies have gotten quite a bit of blowback, whether it be Zoom, whether it be Slack recently, which frankly, I think Slack was a little bit unjustified, the blowback they got. But having a third party assess your artificial intelligence management system and be able to, give you a seal of approval, I think that's something that people will be looking hard for.
What's next for you?
I mean, for StackAware, our goal is to help organizations measure and manage AI-related cybersecurity, compliance, and privacy risk. And the way that I think we're going to go is twofold. One, we're going to continue our AI risk assessment, governance, and penetration testing engagements like we did with Embold. Something we're adding to the mix is ISO 42001 certification prep. So we're going to probably be one of the first ISO 42001 certified companies in the United States around August of this year. So we will be well equipped to help other companies go through that process. At the same time, as we're conducting those assessments, we are identifying a whole series of AI-related risks. So, for example, unintended training of proprietary data, unclear terms and conditions, non-neutral security policy, as we were talking about earlier. So we built a database of risks already and are continuing to build that out with our own certification process. As we're helping other companies, we're doing the same thing. And a lot of these risks are applicable to multiple companies. So, tons of companies use Atlassian, for example. You mentioned that earlier. Thankfully, they are quite transparent, in my opinion. They have an AI trust center, but just merely tracking all that information in different formats and things like that can be tough. And also, a chief security officer can't be expected to keep going back to a website every day or every month or something like that to check up on it. So as we're building out, or as we are delivering these risk assessment and governance programs to our customers, we're also updating these vendor-specific and model-specific AI risks. And we're building a database that we will make available to risk assessment customers, but also other customers who are interested in understanding what the landscape is. And that will be kind of the long-term strategy for the company, is to have a repository of AI risk information that can be accessible by anyone and can be provided for any purpose that they need, and is continuously updated and tracked in a standardized manner.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
And I build in public, so I don't care if I tell the world about what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm always surprised by people who are like, oh, I'm in stealth. I'm like, oh, you don't want people to know about your product?
Mark, you want to add anything?
Yeah. I'll be honest. I feel like we're at such a great turning point in time right now. And I think that it's a time for everybody to innovate. I think there's so many different ideas that can be used for the benefit of people, for humanity, or just for small things that take us a lot of time that are an annoyance. And I think we have tools at our fingertips now that enable us to do these things quickly. I think when you're in industries like our industries, you got to be really careful. But at the end of the day, like, the ability to test things, you can do it quicker. I mean, we could have had 10,000 users manually going through a chat session, and we did have a lot of real users going through chat sessions. Part of our testing has to be manual because you have to keep a human in the loop. But in addition to that, by using AI, you have the ability to synthesize data in ways that you couldn't before, and it feels really human. With then review on top of that from humans, you have the ability to say, hey, this thing can do something that's kind of incredible. and we're setting the bar in the industry for new, improved innovation. And I mean, I feel like Steve and I for the last 2 years have been sending each other different articles, whether it would be, this company had a breach of data because they rolled out an AI product too early, or this company has a really good idea and why didn't I think of that? And I feel like that's always that eureka moment that we only get every so often. So it's a good time to be in IT, and I think that there's a lot to look forward to.
Definitely. I think there's a lot to look forward to. It's going to be very dynamic and exciting. The implications of AI for society are going to be substantial, and I have my own personal views about how individuals should react and how legislators and government should react. But we'll certainly see. We'll certainly see. Well, really appreciate you coming on to the show. I'll give you an opportunity again to plug anything that you would like. Last time you came on, you gave me some great things to look at, but feel free to do so again for folks who missed that first episode.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of AI research things that I would throw out there for people to look into. Train is a responsible AI in healthcare organization that's been put together. Check that out. Also, the Coalition for Responsible AI. They provide decent frameworks on where to start when you're building AI-related products. And then if you want to know more about Embold Health, go to emboldhealth.com/demo.
Awesome. Steve?
And my shout outs, again, Jared Hudson, CEO of Covenant Rescue Group. They help local, state, and federal authorities, as well as legislators, rescue victims of human trafficking, which is fantastic. Let's see here. The two Ryans from KeepAware. KeepAware is an Austin-based browser security company. They do fantastic work. My father-in-law, William Oliver Childress, you can find his music on Apple Music. Search for William O. Childress for any type of piano, off-the-cuff composing. Fantastic. My wife, Crystal Dufour, you can check out her work at crystaldufour.com. She is a fantastic artist, and she can help your company brand itself appropriately. One shout out that I didn't give last time was a shout out to Dr. Richard Diston. I follow him on LinkedIn. He is a fantastic resource as far as security goes, just a different way of thinking about things. Earlier, I mentioned the opposite of the CIA triad, which is, in his words, the 4Ds, right? Destruction, denial, devaluation, and there's more commentary to go along with it, but I definitely would recommend him as a resource for training it in security.
Well, gentlemen, I've learned a lot from this discussion, and I'm also going to follow up on several of the things that you mentioned at the end of the podcast. So really appreciate you taking the time. Great to see you in person, and look forward to another discussion when you've rolled out another awesome AI-powered product.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Walter.
Well, thanks a lot for tuning in to the Deploy Securely podcast. I'm Walter Haydock, your host, founder and CEO of StackAware, and we'll see you next time.